Wait, what? Oh my God. There ain't no... Dude. Oh my God. As of 4 minutes ago, according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, former President Jimmy Carter died at the young age of 100. Dog, he was 100. Stop acting like you're Nostradamus. I'm not acting like I'm Nostradamus at all. However, I did say approximately 4 days ago that one of my predictions for 2024 was that Jimmy Carter would pass, and many chatters made fun of me. I told them, look, there are still a couple days before the year ends. Where were the predictions? Mitch McConnell dies, Jimmy Carter dies, Bill Clinton dies. Those are the 3 deaths I predicted. I also said the other day when we looked back on my predictions, I was like, the year ain't over yet. That's the only reason why I'm confused by this. That is actually wild. That is kind of wild. And the obits are coming out. This is kind of crazy. The tenacious Southerner was turned out of office by disillusioned voters after a single term, but he had a brilliant post-presidential career as a champion of health, peace, and democracy. That is crazy. This was on your list of predictions? Yes. But it's not surprising that this was on my list of predictions. What is surprising is, while this was on my list of predictions, it is a Mickey Mouse one. It is a gimme. It seemed like it was not going to happen. The other 2 on the list were Bill Clinton and Mitch McConnell. I thought I got it wrong. I thought he was going to keep it going until 2025. And in the eve of the turn of this year, Bill Clinton went into the hospital, but it was a fever for a flu, and it wasn't that significant. Things are happening. Former President Bill Clinton hospitalized with fever. Oh my God. If one of my predictions on, oh my God, no way, this was in my 2024 yearly predictions. Oh my God. You predict that a man in hospice was going to die and gave a year span to get it right? Okay, first of all, I'm not saying this is a crazy prediction. I think what makes it crazy is that it did not happen. And then 4 days ago or whatever, I said, like, there's still time in this year. Dude, that's a buzzer beater. Like, I'm sorry. That's what makes this unique. Like, nobody thought he was going to live forever. Okay, calm down. Now, of course, Jimmy Carter is a really interesting figure because he has done a lot of personal good. And a lot of Republicans hate him and historically have considered him like the worst president, seeing him as like a beacon of being a pussy pinko commie, right? What's interesting, however, is that Jimmy Carter, throughout his reign, as every American president, was responsible for a tremendous amount of death and destruction and violence all around the world. And maybe even domestically, he was the leading figure in the neoliberal changes that occurred within Democratic leadership, marking an attitude shift in the way that the modern Democratic Party that you absolutely despise operated. Many people that are more knowledgeable than myself talk about how he was the original neoliberal president. How did he die? The plane crash? No, I think he died because he was at the end of his life, dude. He was at 1 HP for quite a long time. It is one of those unique moments where, like, I do think that even a person who is an otherwise good individual in the helm of power, especially when they are sitting on the throne of empire, American empire, can do a metric ton of evil. I do think Jimmy Carter is not a bad person. I think as far as like American presidents goes, like individually, I don't think he is openly evil. But given the role that he took on, he did a whole bunch of evil. Hard disagree for him. No, as a person, as an individual, I think Jimmy Carter was a pretty good person. He's not like George W. Bush, like where the humanizing component of George W. Bush is that he paints like he paints the dead Iraqi children that he's responsible for killing. Okay. You're absolutely wrong about this. Come on, dude. Jimmy Carter was alive for both the rise and fall of Nazi Germany. He saw the moon landing. He was alive for the invention of the toast, like the sliced bread. He was alive for the invention of the state of Israel. And perhaps most importantly, Jimmy Carter was alive for Haktua. And I suspect he was also very taken aback by Haley Welch, also known as Haktua Girl, pulling a rug pull on many Americans, including Jimmy Carter. Perhaps this contributed to his untimely demise at the age of 100. From the invention of flight at Kitty Hawk to the collapse of Haktua, Jimmy Carter saw it all. Is it if I say Jimmy Carter saw the rise and fall of Adolf Hitler and perhaps more notably Hawk Tuah? I mean, it's a joke, but we all know how the internet takes the joke. I did it. I posted it. If heaven is real, Jimmy's farming peanuts for Jesus. I don't know if any American president goes to heaven, chatter. You know, if there is a heaven and hell, I don't think any American president is going to heaven. There is not enough atonement that you can engage in personally. I think that debt will be paid. And yes, not even Carter, who did engage in a ton of good. Absolutely. In his individual life, Jimmy Carter was an exemplary individual. That much is 100% true. I will never sit here and act like that's not the case. That's why I'm saying he's one of the very unique. He is a unique president in the sense that out of all of like the modern age American presidents, he is the one notable figure that comes to mind that actively, in a very hands-on approach, did good things. I'm not from the USA. Can you explain what good things he did? Habitat for Humanity, he like actively built houses on his own, set up global NGOs that still actively monitor to this day, like foreign policy initiatives from a much more sensible perspective. Why are you calling him a good guy? He committed genocide in East Timor. Chatter, I think you misunderstood what I was saying. I think it's important to note that he was a good person individually, and still is, you know, I mentioned over and over again that he's probably looking up at us if there is a heaven and hell. Okay. You understand? I think it's also really interesting because like you can be the best person possible in your individual affairs and yet still do a metric ton of objectively evil things, you know, when you are sitting on the throne. Jimmy Carter, a no-frills and steel-willed Southern governor who was elected president in 1976, was rejected by disillusioned voters after a single term and went on to extraordinary post-presidential life that included winning the Nobel Peace Prize. Died Sunday at his home in Plains, Georgia, according to his son, James E. Carter, known as Chip. He was 100 and the oldest living U.S. president at the time, of all time. His son confirmed the death, but did not provide an immediate cause. I mean, we can make up our minds on this. I think you just kind of die at that point. As you know, he was literally living on 1 HP for quite some time. In February 2023, in a statement, the Carter Center said the former president, after a series of hospital stays, was stopped further medical treatment and spent his remaining time at home under hospice care. He had been treated in recent years for an aggressive form of melanoma skin cancer with tumors that spread to his liver and brain. His wife, Rosalind, died on November 19th, 2023 at 96. The Carters, who were close partners in public life, had been married for more than 77 years, the longest presidential marriage in U.S. history. His final public appearance was at her funeral in Plains, where he sat in the front row in a wheelchair. Mr. Carter, a small-town peanut farmer, U.S. Navy veteran, and Georgia governor from 1971 to 1975, was the first president from the Deep South since 1837, and the only Democrat elected president between Lyndon B. Johnson's and Bill Clinton's terms in the White House. As the nation's 39th president, he governed with strong Democratic majorities in Congress, but in a country that was growing more conservative. 4 years after taking office, Mr. Carter lost his bid for re-election in a landslide to one of the most conservative political figures in the era, Ronald Reagan. When Mr. Carter left Washington in January 1981, he was widely regarded as a mediocre president, if not an outright failure. The list of what had gone wrong during his presidency, not all of it his fault, was long. It was a time of economic distress with stagnant economy and stubbornly high unemployment and inflation. Stagflation, connoting both low growth and high inflation, was a description that critics used to attack Mr. Carter's economic policies. In the summer of 1979, Americans waited in long lines at service stations as gasoline supplies dwindled and prices soared after the revolution in Iran disrupted the global oil supply. So Noam Chomsky, this is a very famous Noam Chomsky bit where he just like, in the shortest terms, he just like goes over some of the war crimes of every single president. For those of you who are confused about like what Carter has done, this is just foreign policy. We haven't even talked about like domestic policy and how some of the initiatives laid forth by the Carter administration basically supercharged or at least provided reasonable ground for the Reagan administration to come in and turn America into the shithole that you know and love.
Carter increased as the Indonesian atrocities were increasing. They peaked in 1978. Carter's flow of weapons to Indonesia increased when Congress imposed human rights restrictions. By then, there was a human rights movement in Congress to block the flow of advanced weaponry to Indonesia. Carter arranged through Mondale, vice president, to get Israel to send U.S. Skyhawks to Indonesia to enable Indonesia to what turned out to be near genocide, killing maybe a quarter of the population or something. In the Middle East, Carter just won the Nobel Prize. His great achievement was the Camp David agreements,
Yeah.
The Camp David agreements are presented as a diplomatic triumph for the United States. In fact, they were a diplomatic catastrophe. At Camp David, the United States and Israel accepted, finally, Egypt's 1971 offer, which they had then, U.S. had rejected at the time, except that now it was...
Can you explain Ronald Reagan administration like I'm 5? Sure. Everything that you despise about, like, as a consumer, everything that you despise about, like, versions of the same products that you get, all the way from that to broad sweeping anti-labor initiatives that were implemented and continue to this day, can be traced back to Ronald Reagan, Reaganomics, trickle-down economics, virtually everything that sucks in the United States of America. I'm not in favor of like a single person being responsible for all of the evil. Obviously, you know, that is anti-materialist thinking. Having said that, however, in the most reductive terms, if you hate something that's happening and you're like, why does the government have no solution to this? It seems like other competent administrations actually have a solution to this. Why is there so much income inequality? Why is there so much death and destruction? You can trace all of that back to Ronald Reagan. He is the guy. And he is so bad that you can even point to Carter opening up the opportunity for this evil spawn of Satan to take control over, by incredible margins, the American government and virtually destroy everything about American life. So Jimmy Carter, regardless on the initial opinions on Israel-Palestine or what he did, once again, I must repeat my original position that, like, post-presidency, he had a lot of prescient takes on Israel. This is one of them. Here he is on Democracy Now! In 2007, talking about the utilization of the term apartheid when describing Israel.
The word apartheid is exactly accurate. You know, this is an area that's occupied by two powers. They're now completely separated. The Palestinians can't even ride on the same roads that the Israelis have created or built in Palestinian territory. The Israelis never see a Palestinian except their Israeli soldiers. The Palestinians never see an Israeli except at a distance, except the Israeli soldiers. So within Palestinian territory, they're absolutely and totally separated, much worse than they were in South Africa, by the way. And the other thing is, the other definition of apartheid is one side dominates the other, and the Israelis completely dominate the life of the Palestinian people.
Why don't Americans know what you have seen?
Americans don't want to know, and many Israelis don't want to know what is going on inside Palestine. It's a terrible human rights persecution that far transcends what any outsider would. There are powerful political forces in America that prevents any objective analysis of the problem in the Holy Land. I think it's accurate to say that not a single member of Congress with whom I'm familiar would possibly speak out and call for Israel to withdraw to their legal boundaries, or to publicize the plight of the Palestinians, or even to call publicly and repeatedly for good faith peace talks. There hadn't been a day of peace talks now in more than 7 years. So this is a taboo subject, and I would say that if any member of Congress did speak out, as I've just described, they would probably not be back into Congress the next term.
Yeah, here is Jimmy Carter's #1 hater in the United States of America, Felix Biederman, who has apparently heard of the news. Iconic Jimmy Carter moments: Uberizing international warfare, abandoning New Deal policies in favor of a deregulatory race to the bottom, inviting Lash to the White House and pleading, please tell me what to do, and Lash going, I don't know, just give up. Mr. Carter made energy his signature domestic policy initiative, and he had some success, but events outside of his control intervened. In March 1979, a unit of the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, suffered a core meltdown. The accident was the worst event for U.S. nuclear energy industry and a severe setback of hopes that nuclear power would provide a safe alternative to oil and other fossil fuels. Mr. Carter's fortunes were no better overseas. In November 1979, an Iranian mob seized control of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, taking 52 Americans as hostages. It was the beginning of a 444-day ordeal that played out daily on television and did not end until January 20th, 1981, the day Mr. Carter left office, when the hostages were released. Here it is. Jimmy Carter outlived one of his obituary writers. Peter Baker is the chief White House correspondent for the Times. Roy Reid, who died in 2017, was a Times national correspondent who for many years covered the South. Yeah, obituary writers sometimes start writing the obituaries so long ago that they pass away before the subject dies.
Namesake Carter Center touched the lives of millions.
Well, the work at the Carter Center has been, I'd say, more personally gratifying to me.
Founded in 1982 as part of his presidential library, the Carter Center has worked to ensure the fairness of more than 100 elections in nearly 40 countries.
Low-key, one of the most like pro-Venezuelan institutions in America.
Guinea worm that had long burdened parts of Africa.
Guinea worm is probably one of the oldest diseases remembered by human beings. It's in the Bible. We think it's a fiery serpent.
For his work, Jimmy Carter earned the Nobel Peace Prize in 2002. In addition to his philanthropic work, Jimmy Carter was a prolific author. He published more than 25 books touching on his belief in God, country, and kindness. You only have to have two loves in your life, he wrote, for God and for the person in front of you at any particular time. The person with Carter most was his wife, Rosalind, who worshiped alongside him for more than 7 decades.
When I'm overseas, or when she is, we read the same passage in the Bible, and we kind of, communicate silently.
Even when cancer threatened to take Mr. Carter from his wife and from the life he loved, he kept his faith and looked again.
Now I feel, that it's in the hands of...
Interesting. There was a book that mentioned Israel-Palestine in there, but not the one that calls Israel an apartheid. I wonder why. There was an Israel-Palestine book in there, Peace in the Holy Land or whatever. But there wasn't the one where he openly says Palestine not apartheid or peace not apartheid.
Jeff is on the phone, and Chip Carter, the former president's son, said, "My father was a hero not only to me but to everyone who believes in peace, human rights, and unselfish love." And I guess, Jeff, I bring that quote up because for President Carter, there's almost two major chapters in his legacy. Of course, his time in office.
I'm sorry, I'm a product of American presidents, American education system, but doesn't that seem bad? He doesn't seem that bad compared to other presidents. No, especially for like all of his work post-presidency, which is valid. Like he's just like kind of a dunderhead, a really religious guy, actually a religious guy, not like fake religious in the way that Trump is, and certainly not insane religious in the way that like Mike Pence is. He is like the classic religious guy that's like, I want to abide by my faith and I want to do the things that the Bible tells me to do, good things for others, be kind to individuals, that kind of thing. And in spite of all of that, of course, he was still tasked with doing horrifyingly monstrous things as the president of the United States. Also, a lot of people in the Republican Party historically have hated him and have hailed him as like pre-Obama. Everyone used to point to Carter as like the worst president. I actually don't know what the inflection point is for why so many Republicans hate Carter. Because like the hatred they have for him is far more severe. Like they hate Bill Clinton, they hate Obama, they hate Obama the most. We know what it is for Barack Obama. For Barack Obama, it's obviously being black first and foremost. But like for Jimmy Carter, I feel like they saw him as like a pinko commie libtard who loves apologizing to the rest of the world for America's war crimes or whatever, even though he wasn't. But I just don't know why they hate him that much.
To lead the life that they live, and just what kind of example did they set, do you believe, for the country and world at large in just their relation?
I think it could be like a similar dynamic to how liberals despise leftists, because from their perspective, like it makes them kind of look back at their own ideological shortcomings. Like that's why liberal politicians hate like Bernie Sanders, for example, because they look to Bernie Sanders and they're like, you're a piece of shit because you are really pushing the needle. And for maybe like conservative religious freaks, they hate that he's like at least his output in his individual life was like of a deeply religious man who is not a bad guy. They're really just drafting off the anger that people felt against Carter. America literally ran out of gasoline. You couldn't fill your tank during his presidency. Imagine what the Treatlers would do. Yeah, Adolf Treatlers would do if that happened in the U.S. $10 a gallon gas, etc. The boomers were so angry. Yeah, I guess that's what it is. That's got to be like the most significant part of this, right? Was Jimmy Carter dying in your 2024 predictions? Yes, it was. But that's like not that interesting. What's actually interesting is that not only was it in my predictions, but I literally said a couple days ago, there's still time for the year to end when people were making fun of me for predicting that Jimmy Carter would die in 2024. That's what's interesting about it, I think, or at least somewhat interesting about it, is that like he did do a buzzer beater. Wait, what did Trump say? Oh my God. Hold on. New Trump tweet just dropped. Yeah. You want to come read it? Jimmy Carter died. I don't know if you knew that.
I heard the news. Very sad.
All right, read.
He was only 100. So young.
So young. Who could have thought? Anyway, here.
Is it? Are you doing it in the background? Just heard the news about the passing of President Jimmy Carter. Those of us who have been fortunate enough to have served as president understand that this is a very exclusive club, and only we can relate to the enormous responsibility of leading the greatest nation in history. The challenges Jimmy faced as president came at a pivotal time for our country, and frankly, he did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans, not as much as me, but a lot. For that, we all owe him a debt of gratitude. Melania and I are thinking warmly of the Carter family and their loved ones during this difficult time. We urge everyone to keep them in their hearts and prayers.
That was pretty good.
Thank you.
Forever, I think whenever Trump tries to eulogize someone, I'm going to play that song.
Yeah.
It has to be played
This
in
was
the background.
pretty nice. This was a pretty nice message that he
Yeah,
wrote.
it's kind of surprising that he didn't go, Carter was the worst American
a
president.
big time loser, as we know.
Yeah, major
Couldn't
loser.
cut it. Couldn't cut it 2 times, no.
Yeah.
He tried to put solar panels on the White House.
But just like Sleepy Joe Biden, his defeat brought back one of the greatest, second greatest American presidents. Joe Biden's defeat brought me back, and Carter brought Ronald Reagan, who is not the greatest president, but the second after myself.